If the group is only 2 people, do you think we should still carry on?
A lot of people can't make the 12 o'clock time, so they come back for the recording, which we add to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, but the trouble is I was going to do a fair amount of writing this session, so that's not really a lecture.
We clip off the parts where people do
Okay.
stuff.
All right. Okay. All right. I feel like going off and getting coffee, but I won't. Ashad, could you put the online handbook in the chat?
I'm putting it in now.
Great, thank you. What do you think? It's 12:05.
I think we can start.
All right. So, Sakani and Helene, please talk. And actually, also Simone and Christine and Ashad.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So this is going to be actually just a conversation between us few. So there are just 6 of us. So last Wednesday we looked at writing an argument. Do you remember what we covered, Sakani? Helene, were you there last week?
Unfortunately, last week I wasn't able to join.
No, don't worry. Sakani or Ashad or Simone or Christine, perhaps not Christine, I think you weren't there. What do you remember from last week?
I think she can also, even Helen was not there, she can still see on the chat, because it was about us giving insight about, how do we read, what are the things that could make us to be critical readers and all that. So I just see some of the stuff is also still there in the chat, but it was that engagement that we had. Thanks. And also people were giving about what they're studying, what they wanted to do, how they could make meaningful reading. How do we read to make it more meaningful when we study? Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. So it was looking at academic writing as the art of reasoned discourse employed by someone to convince others of something. So every argument or every piece of writing actually is situated. That you had the image of Aristotle's rhetorical triangle. The art of reasoned discourse, that's what we learn, employed by someone to convince others of something. So that involves 3 elements that have to work for an argument to be successful. Good at the top of the triangle, logos, the clear argument, the art of reasoned discourse is usually claim, reasons, and evidence employed by someone, 1 foot of the triangle. That's the implied credibility of the author on this subject, why we should trust you on this subject. And then the other foot, in order to convince others of something, the engagement of the values, beliefs, and principles of your particular readership. So we tried as an example of understanding how that focus is the action of an argument through thinking of our own research. So it was, I am studying the exact topic of your research in order to find out how or why your interest as a researcher, so that my readers can see the significance of why your particular readers would be interested in it. And that frame sentence, which was completed very well by some people in the chat, is a way of focusing your argument and also demonstrating Aristotle's rhetorical triangle. Logos, I am studying in order to find out how or why you as the researcher, in order to gauge my audience. This is useful for us as teachers because it makes clear that all writing is situated. Every act of communication is by a particular person at a particular time with a certain argument, with a certain audience in mind, and will be successful insofar as it reaches that audience. It's also good to explain this to students so that they begin to understand how writing in different disciplines differs. All this was in the Creative Academic Handbook, which was shared last week. And we also looked at the research cycle, which showed how you move from practical problem to research question to research problem, and underlined that academic inquiry and academic argument is about looking for what we don't know. It's for the gaps in knowledge. It's not just fixing the problem, it's working out what the questions are and then pushing that circle further so you can get into the conceptual territory. At the end of the session, there were two comments that I thought were very useful. One was from Anne, who talked about that it took a long while for her to find her voice in writing in health sciences. And what do we mean by voice? And I think she was agreeing that voice is how you frame, voice is how you argue, voice is your choice of your craft of writing. And then the other thing that Anne picked up, which I think Sakani resonated with as well, is the how crucial it is to develop reading, to interrogate reading. And that's for our students and for ourselves. Greetings, Lisel. It's a small group and I'm very glad to see you. So that was the comment from Anne. How do we develop voice? How do we get ourselves and our students to interrogate reading more? Stuart said that the session made him realize that we need to help students conceptualize their research more and not just go straight into methodology. I was very happy to hear that comment too, because we're stressing in the writing program that writing is thinking. So it's not English, it's not grammar, it's not just editing, it's using words and languages to further our thought. It's thinking as we write, as well as learning how to write within a discipline and be effective. So I think actually Sakani said this right at the beginning, everyone's different, but the thing that we're after is engagement. And that's for ourselves and for our students, that we're not just pressing in AI and letting AI do everything for us, but it's a real engagement of ourselves and our students in thinking within the discipline. And I'm going to argue in this session, if you just reflect on your own modes of engagement, your own methods, that will make you a better teacher of writing with your students. You don't need to have sort of studied writing or whatever. Simply to be reflective on how you write immediately helps the students start being reflective on their own processes of writing. Now, we are 7 people, so please speak. And I'm going to actually ask everybody as a beginning to think about this individual nature of writing. Another quote from a philosopher, Michael Polanyi, he said, and so this is the sciences as well, it's supposedly objective disciplines, but he said, into every act of knowing, there enters the passionate engagement of the knower with what is being known. Into every act of knowing, there enters the passionate engagement of the knower with the known. In other words, even if we are doing science and accounting even, there is a reason. We have a hook. There's a reason for us to be doing this, and we have some ideas. And even if our writing ends up being a very objective discussion about the patterns of swallows in migration, there is our engagement. And if we haven't got the engagement, the writing will be dead and boring. The engagement is crucial. So before I go any further, I'm going to ask each of you to think of your own writing, and without thinking very hard, just to tell me all right, and don't try hard, but what metaphor would you give for your process of writing at the moment? You think of the writing you have to do, what metaphor comes to mind? So I'm going to pick on someone. Maybe I should try it myself, seeing as it's a... So for me, I think it might be a window, because I like writing. It's a window I would like to open, and I can see some nice landscapes out of that window, but I haven't been able to open it yet because I've got too much to do. Arshad, what would be your metaphor for your writing at the moment?
I have to think a bit about it. But
don't think too hard. Just whatever comes to mind, and it's only what you're thinking in these 5 minutes. It might be something different. All right, I'll give you a few seconds, and I'm going to ask: is that Simone or Christine?
It's me.
It's Christine.
Christine, please. What's your metaphor?
Hindsight. A lot of times, one of the best advice I got as a student was sometimes just doing something and figuring out what doesn't work helps you learn and improve your writing more than trying. Because as students, we're taught you only have one chance to get it right in a test, in an essay, but it's not the same in academia. So you don't have, it's a process where you can try stuff. If it doesn't work, then you can improve it.
Okay, so what would your metaphor be?
Hindsight. So learning in
Hindsight.
hindsight.
Okay, all right, very nice. Okay, thank you. Sakani. Don't think too hard. Whatever metaphor comes into mind. People say pyramids, flowers.
Like it's for me, it's almost like having a magnifying glass.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because yeah, it's something that's very small, but that can be made bigger and everything as you go through it, as you go through analysis. Yeah.
You're clearly a scientist. And what would you like to improve in your writing, Sakani, at the moment?
At the moment, I think I would like to improve I would say it's more of coherence in what I'm writing. I tend to have lots of big ideas, and just to make it more coherent so that there's a logical flow to what I'm saying and everything. That's what I'd really, really like to improve.
And that's common for many people. And do go back to that creative academic handbook, because that's argument and that's things, we know there's a vocabulary of argument, there's strategies, and sort of playing with argument all the time, I think helps with coherence, or helps us to find coherence. Lizelle.
I've written in the chat that my metaphor is a tennis racket. I like I've got the frame and I've got the big idea, but then I'm writing and bullet points, so that's where the connections are made in my mind. I can make all the connections, but what is written on paper is the bare strings. So there's so much of my thinking that is falling through the open spaces, but I'm writing just enough so that people can get an idea to be able to engage in a match. But I would like to fill the holes, to make the connections more explicit, and not having too many holes in my writing, if that
that's
makes
very good,
sense.
and it does, and that was a very nice move from the metaphor to the explanation, and that's quite interesting. And the holes falling through, I think, sort of means that you have to think, when you've got your paper, then start thinking of what how the reader would read it, because we talked about writerly writing and readerly writing. So when you're generating your paper, you're writing for yourself and to work out your thoughts. When you've got your full draft, then you put your mind into the mind of the reader and see how they would read the argument. So perhaps sharing your work as well as thinking of theirs. But that's very nice metaphor. I'm going to ask somebody else. Michelle, you're a little bit safe because you came a bit later. But Helene, what would be your metaphor for your writing process?
So I am English is not my first language, so for me writing is difficult. I don't know if you know the Asterix character Obelix.
I do. I like Obelix.
Yes, he's the guy carrying the huge rock on his back. So
striped trousers, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So we have a similar mustache. So yeah, for me it's like carrying this big rock. So I struggle to just write academically correct, first of all, and also to the technical stuff sometimes is really difficult for me. Do you use past tense, future tense, and so forth? Just the practical language stuff is sometimes for me really difficult.
Very good. Very good also, because that's an insight into many of the students. And I think often when people don't have English as a second language, everything is slightly different, or as a first language. The difficulties are more specific. The rock, though, also, I mean, a very big element is confidence. And the rock sounds as though there's something dragging you down a bit. Yeah. Anyway, very interesting. Right. I might now ask, Noctula. Noctula, if you were to give a metaphor for your process of writing at the moment, what would it be? And we're beginning this with Sakani's insight in that everyone's writing is different and everyone's approach to writing is different. And we're thinking of how to reflect on our own ways into writing and how that helps us also to help the students to reflect to their own ways into writing. So Noctula, what would be your metaphor for your process of writing? And don't think too much about it.
Spider web.
Spider web, okay.
Because sometimes I think I know what I'm saying. Then when I read tomorrow, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Then I have to delete everything. So it's not fixed, it's not coherent. So I think I struggle to get the message across precisely.
All right, so thank you. So Lizelle and Noctula and Helene, you're all talking a bit about pain and heaviness. So there is this sort of psychological element, and you get it with students as well. And I would say it's around confidence as partly. I mean, obviously, but I think you can get the language right further down the line. I'm currently editing a book of anthropologists, and none of them have English as a first language. And some of them are just about there because they've got their thinking there, and we can fix the language later. But certainly there is this psychological element that can completely trip you up. Because if you keep second guessing yourself and feeling the weight and judging yourself, then you don't get anything out there. So the confidence actually is a massive issue. Often, for students, it can result in plagiarism, but I think we need to get people more comfortable with writing and with mistakes. So first of all, they get their writing clear. It's not that hard actually to fix grammar and stuff, and that can be done later on. But first of all, use the writing with confidence to get your ideas clear. Can I just ask, because it is quite nice hearing all of these. Good. And Michelle, and is it Ami? Michelle, if you were to give a metaphor for your process of writing at the moment, what would it be?
I would say it's like gardening because
Yes.
each word is like a seed that you plant. Sometimes it's flourish and it grows wonderfully, you write effortlessly, but sometimes you are planting or writing weeds. So like the previous speaker just said, it's like a spider web. Then it's like, what did I write here? I have to go back. This is nonsense. So I think it's also just like time to have enough time to focus and concentrate, or are you rushing and pushing yourself? So I think writing is in different phases. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's very difficult and hard to get your thoughts out on paper.
What would you like to improve in your writing at the moment?
I think to improve to better express myself, because I know what I want to say, but it's sometimes difficult to express exactly my thoughts on paper.
What do you do to clarify your expression?
So normally I try to search and look at other authors and articles more or less in my field to see how they have written it, or I use like Grammarly to see maybe my sentencing or my grammar is wrong. That's why the message is not coming across as I want.
I wouldn't go straight to Grammarly myself, but I think going to other authors and then talking to people and then having ways of you repeat it, you iterate it, you try it with somebody else, they see something else, and it gets clearer and clearer in your mind. We're in writing theory. There are two types of theories. Writing as processes and writing as genres. I think they should be linked. So we are thinking about the end product, but everyone has a process of writing and thinking. And you need to be aware of your own processes of thinking in order to improve them. And it's not, I mean, the mistake students make is that they think they can sit down, write a perfect paper. It doesn't happen that way. Thinking doesn't happen that way. How do we think best? So I'm just going to lastly ask, is it Shabalala?
Hello, good. Yes, Amy Shabalala. You can call me Maud.
Maud, okay. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. I've just joined the meeting and I don't know what I have missed. But from what I've heard is that you're trying to establish where people's thoughts, pertaining to writing. So for me, it's like planning a very long distance trip
Yes, good.
Without the, I know I want to get to this place, but it's all, the thought, just thinking about what is it that I want to do, and I also tend to want to see the perfect, right in the beginning, and that in itself results in procrastination, going back and forth. I'm imagining seaweed or weed in a river being pushed left and right by on the sides by the flowing water. So it's a scary thought.
But it's a scary thought, but maybe it's a bit of an adventure. So the what happens between first thoughts and final text is actually a bit of a mystery, and it's different from everybody. And I think we can get better at it. One, if we don't fear it, but embrace the way that we think. And try to find out exactly what you've tried to get the right words, Lizelle. I mean, nothing is perfect, but we just keep trying, and we don't censor ourselves too quickly, and we keep thinking, and it gets clearer and clearer. And we don't settle, and we don't want our students to settle for the average and the predictable. All the time, we want to find out, what is it that we mean we see? We keep on doing it in different ways. There are two images for the writing process that are quite different. One is from a fellow I used to work with in New York called Jeffrey Summerfield, and his idea was that you can't think unless it's in dialogue with someone else or something else. So he talked about the writing process as pretext, paratext, prototext, committed text. This is in the Creative Academic Handbook. Pretext was what's in our mind in the morning, soup. Proto-text is when we start reading, making connections, talking to people. Provisional text is the draft. Again, you talk to people, you revise it. Committed text, it's gone. But before we get to committed text, we can go and have a cup of coffee, do something else, go backwards, the ideas come. So the point of that model is that we need to give ourselves space to think. And you will cramp that space if you have too much anxiety. And I know speaking in another language is hard, but but obviously you do have a lot of English, all of you, and you're in an English environment, and I'm sure you've got a lot of it. You can find the words. If you can just remove the anxiety and then work on your thinking and perhaps use words from other languages, but don't make English this horrible monster that eats your meaning. Just one question after that of Summerfield's image of the pretext, prototext, provisional text, committed text. So it's the idea of the process of thinking and where we get our best ideas. So could I ask somebody to tell me when they get their best ideas? Maybe Lizelle. I think you think about thinking. Lizelle, when do you get your best ideas?
My best ideas is happening between 3 and 4 in the morning.
No, exactly. And I think,
I'm when I wake up and I have my first cup of coffee, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm having this workshop, and I'm very good in, I think that's my strength, is coming up with innovative ideas and making the links. But then as soon as somebody tells me, okay, now put it on paper, it's like all of a sudden my brain goes into a, I don't know how to say in reverse mode, because I'm a doer. I don't want to, you can hear my brain is working overtime already. But so that's my ideas is somebody throws out an idea, I'm thinking about something, but then I'm not a writer, so that's when I'm
stop saying that.
No, so
because I think you are a writer.
If you're coming up, my own mental block,
because you're coming up with innovative ideas. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And going back to that's really the moral of that image, is that we often have our best ideas when we're not trying too hard at odd times. For me, it's in the morning in the shower. If I've got a problem late at night, I know I can sleep on it. And then in the shower, when I suddenly relax, bing, I've got an idea. But that's a crucial part of the writing process. If you are innovative, if you are having good ideas, I think that makes you a good writer myself. And the bit about saying that you're not a good writer, stop doing that. I had a long-term collaborator, Professor Liz Brenner, who's a scientist. And when I first met her, she kept saying, I like being in the lab. I don't like writing. She could write, but she'd siloed herself into thinking this is not what I can do. Whereas I would argue, if you are an innovative thinker, I don't think you can do that without writing, because you're putting those ideas in words, you're seeing things. That's form of writing. That's part of the writing process. Anyway, so that's the motto of that image, that everyone needs to think about how they can best think, students as well. When do you best think? And some of you will think when you are under pressure, and some of you will think when you're walking. It's whenever it is. Now, the other metaphor, which I will mention because it was Amy with a journey. This was Frank Wright, and his image for writing, I just have to watch my fingers now, is a journey, literally, that you have an idea, you have your innovative idea, and that suggests an overarching intention of going in a particular direction. So it is like a road trip. And that overarching intention subordinates everything underneath it, the chapters, paragraph, sentence, and then underneath you have ongoing recursive thought. So that's a very interesting model. One, because it shows the journey of writing, which allows that going backwards at the bottom, but also that if we're helping people with their writing, the one thing that we don't do is say, yes, that's really interesting. Why don't you go in this direction? Because then that whole model discombobulates and falls. So when we're helping people to write, we're not helping them if we're telling them exactly what to do and where to go. We are helping them if we're getting them to surface their thinking, surface their arguments, and help to strengthen them to get in that particular direction. Does that make sense? 12:30. Right.
Yes.
Good. Good. So what I was going to do in this session was a little bit of free write around engagement, and then show you parts of one of the handbooks, because as some of you know, I run the writing program, which now consists of 50 courses, which is huge, 50 courses across the university, and there are some in health sciences, where the course it's an existing course, it's still teaching the same things, but it's been adapted so as to use writing, and writing understood as thinking, to deliver course content. So it's using these writing to learn strategies, which is when you do the talking, the reading, the free writes, the frame sentences, the questionings, informal exercises in order to think, as well as learning how to write the particular documents and ways of writing that you need in that particular discipline. So the writing program helps lecturers to adapt their courses. If they adapt their courses, they submit to the writing board of the faculties. If we think it now qualifies we can recognize it as a writing intensive course, we have some money to give you for writing fellow tutors. And these are people who are part of your team, who allow you to work in this sort of developmental way. So you can have these little activities, and the writing fellows can respond to the students, because this sort of teaching is impossible with just a sort of exam at the end. It's very much developmental. It's giving the students feedback each part of the way as they start walking and becoming better writers. And as we've seen from the discussion at the moment, there isn't, it is engaging the individuals. People write completely differently from different reasons, from different ways in. And if you're working with somebody's writing, you have to work with that person's connection. You can't predict it. You start understanding where they're going, and you help them build on what they can do. So we are at 12:32. Tell me what you would like to do, because you're a nice, sweet group. We could try the free writing. I'll tell you what that is. It would be just 3 minutes on each prompt, and you just write down whatever you think. And I promise, if it's free writing, you don't have to read it out aloud, but it's a way of reflecting on your engagement and how it related to your research interests and how it might suggest ways in which to help other students learn. So the first prompt is to describe any experience of working in your discipline which stays with you. The second prompt is, how does that experience relate to your scholarly interests? The third one is how does that experience and its relation to your scholarly interests suggest ways in which to help other people engage with ideas? That engaging with ideas is a phrase I'm taking from this book, which is wonderful. We have quite a few copies of this in the Wits Writing Centre in Wartenweiler, and if I can twist your arms to make your course writing intensive, I may even give you one of these books. And it's just got 200 ideas basically of little things you can insert into your course to help the students become, it is true, more critical writers and readers. I mean, let's show you the process. So part one, understanding connections between thinking and writing. See that? There's designing problem-based assignments, coaching students as learners, as thinkers, as writers. It's a great book. Reading, commenting on, and grading student writing. Lovely book. And then we'd look a little bit at the aims of the writing program. So you'll see the sorts of things that we're doing and some of the suggestions of strategies. I thought we could look at the strategies on reading in the handbook. So dear people, as there are not many of you, what would you like to do? Would you like to try the free write briefly or go to the handbook?
If I have a vote, I would like to go to the handbook because that sounds very interesting. And then a second follow-up question, can lecturers also attend any of those courses? Because I would love to attend.
Well, the courses are your courses. They're existing disciplinary courses that have been changed to make them writing intensive. But you might be interested in how people have changed their courses. We've got that on the Ulwazi site.
Okay.
There's also what is right. Everyone's saying handbook. Nobody wants to write. All right. But you came to this, so I think that's quite good. I'll give you one example of the. Shall I read you? I can read you an example of my free writing on those topics, so you get the idea.
Would that
be
great?
Good. Okay. Thank you. Handbook. Okay. Where was I going? Oh, yes. So Lizelle, I'll put it in the chat. This I think would interest you. WEC. Writing enhanced curriculum. We're moving towards this. So we've got the writing intensive courses at the University of Minnesota. So if you looked up WEC at University of Minnesota, you'd get the WEC site. Now, this is a very, very recent, it's only 2018. And the idea of the writing enhanced curriculum is that each department thinks, first of all, about the types of writing they're asking for. What do they value in writing? And that's a hard question. And first of all, people will just say argument and clarity, and you push them harder. And what you're really asking is how do you write and think as, which department are you in? Health science education, or it could be accounting, or it could be whatever it is. I mean, we had somebody from health sciences, and his was very much about reflection. That was really interesting. In accounting, for instance, when I pushed them, what they wanted the students to do was to read a text in terms of categories. So it's types, values of writing, what do you want your graduates to be able to do, and then how do you measure the developing attributes that you want your graduates to have. So if you go to this WEC website, they have sample writing plans of very different disciplines. And that's fascinating because it's that discipline in that university that's decided this is what we are concentrating on, particular types of sociological questions or whatever it is. And it makes the point that writing is not, being a secretary. Writing is really developing what you value and how you participate in the discipline, and getting a department to start having some agreement about their intellectual project in that department at that time is quite exciting. All right, so I'll just give you one example of the free write, because I would like you to think of that yourselves, of, what are the things that engaged you and what were the consequences. So I'll read you this one. So for mine, it was teaching writing. First few days in New York City, this is experience, in a strange environment. I had a cold, I think, and I was jet lagged. And immediately and surprisingly, I got a job, and I was in a crowded classroom with American students. We had to study Orwell's Shooting an Elephant, and I wasn't at all sure what they knew or thought. I didn't want to ramble on and not get through to them at all. I did want to find out their beginning points, their questions. So I asked all of them to write down 3 questions about this essay from George Orwell, which is called Shooting an Elephant. All of you write down 3 questions. All questions are valid, I said. Write down anything you want to ask about the text. They did. Share with the person next to you. In those pairs, choose one question and write it on the blackboard. They clustered around the dusty board with different coloured chalks and wrote. I was happy to stand at the back of the room. Then I tried to read aloud all the questions. They weren't ones I would have asked, and it was interesting to me that they asked them. Which one shall we start with? And so the class ran itself, and my job was to orchestrate the conversation. Somewhere in the middle of that, a boy said that the shooting of the elephant reminded him of an abortion. I looked at him and moved quickly on. So how does that relate to my interests? It's the priority of starting points. Everyone has a different starting point, and those are precious. The need to find starting points of students, and then as a teacher, to learn how to improvise with responses. Also need to listen to the unexpected and work with what it might mean. In this particular case, it was the first indication of schizophrenia. So then how does that experience suggest ways to help other people think about the teaching of writing? And I wrote down questions as a constant technique, improvisation as a skill to be practiced and trusted, listening as something necessary and dangerous, involving ethical decisions about confidentiality and responsibility. So the point, again, the point I keep making really is the finding a voice is crucial. And it doesn't mean to say that you're writing very emotional stuff. It means that you are writing. You've got your authorship. You found out what you want to say and how to contribute that to bigger conversations. So do think about your reasons for engagement. And when you're teaching writing, if you can help the students also get that spark that keeps them engaged and interested in the topic. Does anyone here just have a brief memory of something that got them, or something that stays with them, as their own particular, as something that helped them engage with their discipline? Anyone got a brief story? Cowards. No one? All right. Okay. So we'll have a go then at where's the share button? There it is. Just quickly go to the where is it? All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Hallelujah. So this is the online handbook for the writing program. And I just want to give you an idea of the program, so you can see it's much more about language. All of them have these aims, and actually I've added to these aims now. Every single course, whether it's in chemistry, English, sociology, social work, we're trying to aim for a combination of some of these aims for these courses to help the students pose worthwhile questions, evaluate arguments, give and receive constructive criticism, distinguish among fact, inference, and opinion, articulate complex ideas clearly, deal with problems that have no simple solutions, consider purpose and audience. And one I've added recently is learn how to navigate, construct, and evaluate online knowledge, understand how different disciplines present and define themselves, become informed and independent thinkers. So I can't see you now, but please somebody say, what do you think the program is trying to do? If it's trying to forward those types of aims.
Developing clinical reasoning and critical thinking.
Excellent.
Have we lost you?
We have lost Pamela. Let me just, there she's back now. Pamela, you're muted.
Gosh, you can tell I'm not terribly happy online. Sorry about that. All right. Am I still sharing? I'm not, am I?
Not right now.
No. Oh, but to go back to those aims, so exactly, that's what we're trying to do. And we're very explicit about that because in the history of South Africa, when you had Bantu education, the aim was to create servitude, really, to put people into boxes. There was a thing called fundamental pedagogics. Has anyone heard of fundamental pedagogics?
No.
Well, in fundamental pedagogics, it was an extremely hierarchical classroom. It was rote learning. You weren't allowed to ask questions, etc., etc. And that was the type of learning and pedagogy that served a totalitarian regime. With our aims there, we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to actually work towards participative democracy. So that's why that's pretty key. I hope I don't lock myself out again. Right, so here is, the steps. And I'm just going to take you to the reading bit for some of the strategies. There we go. Because it's key. Reading is part of writing. How do we prompt some of those strategies? But do read through this at your leisure and look at the earlier one I sent before and come to the Writing Centre at any point for a discussion about writing, because that's what we're after. So how do we read in a way that interrogates? Reading has to be as active as writing, as you know, having that notebook to write down things at 3 a.m, just constantly using the pen, using our mind so that we stay awake and we think. So the classical way of doing this is marginal notes, annotations, and you've probably heard of hypotheses, which is a way of using social annotation. Referring to reading, I have heard from people in health sciences saying that they can only assign one article for every 2 months or something. And I think we've really got to expect the students to read more. I'm terrified of people who don't read, because that's how the manipulation in the world happens at the moment. It's people not reading deeply. We have to push reading. So this online handbook has been, actually, Lenora, there you are. She's from the School of Public Health. She's using provocations from the reading on WhatsApp. Carl van Veek, in English and in engineering, he's using various reading strategies to make processes of reading part of his course. This is a very simple thing that should be, if you don't use it, might help you straight away. What it says, what it does. So you take a medical article and you ask them to say, what does it say in an introduction and what does it do in the introduction? So they're constantly reading texts for content, but also for how it is structured and set up. Argument structure, we talked about claim, reasons, and evidence last session and identifying them. And that's another way of going through articles, underlining claims, reasons, and evidence, and so they can see. Learning from models, very useful. Learning from their own work, learning from other people's work, but looking at models of writing. This is a very quick way of evaluating proficiency, looking in terms of audience, how well does it reach its target audience, argument, how clear is this, the structure of the thinking, evidence, how effectively substantiated, mechanics, only a little bit, only 25% there. Does the mechanics facilitate meaning or impede meaning? I quite like when I do grading for it not to add up to 100%, because 100% suggests that when we're grading, it's a scientific exactitude, whereas it isn't. You'll see in the Bean book, if you ever get it, that he suggests 2 grades, one a holistic grade and another a quantifiable grade from a rubric. How do we build in argument? This is quite nice. Is when in your presentations, model argument. So begin with a question, and the students have to think what their answer is already. And then at the end of the session, they summarize your answer, and then they perhaps critique it. So model your own thinking in the presentation. 5 minutes free writing. 5 minutes free writing. If there's ever a pause in a class, I was always told this, that you have no excuse for boring people. It's harder online because I can't tell whether you're bored or not, but in the room you can. And you can pause and just give them a 5-minute task. And that task can be a free write on prompts, or it can be a very simple frame sentence that allows you to work with something, 3 differences between something are, or the actions of something resulted in. Little frame sentences like that to get them to think.
Pamela, sorry, Lizelle did put a comment in the chat.
Yes.
She said, what I gain from what you're presenting, Pamela, is that we as lecturers are not embracing the possibilities that reading and writing can offer.
Good.
We
Thank you,
also
Lisa.
do not guide the students on what we expect them to do, scaffold the activities, such steps to get them to the final step.
Thank you, Lizelle. That's very nice. I'm just going to show you these letters. Letters are quite nice. So that's at the end of a session. It depends how big your classes are, but if they're not too huge, if they write an informal letter to you about what they've understood and what they want to know more of, or something like that, you might find that, especially as we've already identified there's a fair amount of anxiety about writing, but if you write a letter to somebody or a WhatsApp thing or whatever, there's no anxiety, and you're responding not to evaluate, but to respond to their question. So we're setting up a channel of communication. I've often found that people's academic submissions are really horrible, but their informal writing has a lot of life. So we work with that. We get that informal writing going so that it starts infusing their regular. I'm going to stop there. As you see, there's plenty of it, but that business about regularity is quite key, that you regularly use these little writing to learn activities. Right, so I'm back here. Thank you, Lizelle. That very good comment. And we've got 10 minutes left. So I would like comment from everybody or a question from everybody about something they might have taken from this, or questions that they have, or comments or whatever. Who should I pick on? Unless somebody's ready to speak. Noktula. Oh no, Helene, go for it, Helene.
I'm so sorry. I have to leave the meeting in
That's
about
fine.
a minute or so. So this was an incredibly valuable session for me, and I really appreciate all the resources, because I can sit in the middle of the night and read through this. So honestly, I really appreciate this. It was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. So the things that I've sent are things that I've written, the Creative Academic Journal and the online handbook. But what we have in the Wharton-Weiler Writing Centre, I think it's the only library in the country of books on writing, including books on writing in the discipline. So, you're very welcome to come at any point and browse through them. It's a reference library. And then the other thing is, the best way to help your students, as I said at the beginning, is working on our own writing. So actually quite a lot of lecturers now are forming writing groups where they regularly meet and they help each other publish, that sort of thing. And we need the students to do that too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody else? Questions, thoughts, comments, provocations, whatever you want to say. Lizelle.
Thank you. I'm just thinking that we need to get over because I'm in faculty development and in CHSE, every time you want to tell people that there's different ways of teaching, you don't always just have to have a lecture. They're going to let the student do the thinking, not just, why do you want to work harder than your students, kind of thing.
Yes.
And they're always throwing back the argument, but we've got huge class numbers and we don't want to mark. But if you are engaging them in reading one another's and responding, like you were saying about the informal writing, the WhatsApp kind of thing, give one compliment of what you've gained out of this. Is it true? Is it false? So you can use writing in different ways, and I like I will definitely go through to get some ideas of activities that we can give people, what they can start using in their own teaching and learning. So thank you for. My brain is buzzing.
Good.
Yeah, it's. I just need to go and start writing down all of these ideas to make it more formal. But I will definitely put my bum on the seat and start doing that.
And enjoy it as well, because I mean that pleasure is such a good principle, and then why can't we enjoy things? The huge classes, I don't underestimate that. It is much harder with a huge class, but peer review, developing their ability to do peer review, and I'm pointing out that peer review is going to be part of their career. Peer review is very good, and if you do peer review, you start simple, so everyone has to say what they liked about it or what they didn't like, or what they want to know more about, or so and then you get into different types of peer review, but modeling peer review is useful. Early on in my career, when I first came to Wits, I used a thing called a peer facilitator system, because I was asked to go into 200 people doing electrical engineering and help them with their reports, which, since then I later on realized I should not be saying anything about electrical engineering. But what I've worked out with that group of 200 was that in each group of 10, I said, who is your leader? And they volunteered, or one person volunteered. I gave that one person the lesson plan. It was a bit like an army. So then you had all these groups of 10 with this one person who was facilitating the thing. And then that one person then gave a report back to me. And we did this for quite a while. So these peer group facilitators, I didn't use the word prefects, but they're a bit like prefects. They were this group that I could send the lesson plan to in advance. They then ran the little lesson plan, and then they gave me information back. So I think you could even have sort of seminars with those peer group facilitators. And for years and years, I stayed in contact with them, and they were first years. So I think it's wrong to think with these huge classes that we stay with this sort of mass education, which doesn't work. I think mass broadcast can work with people who already know what they're doing. But in this country, I think we've got all the time to engage people who are coming from very different backgrounds. So the mass stuff doesn't work. We've got to break it down to individuals. And in the end, it is an individual. If you write and you write successfully, it's you writing successfully. So somehow we have to get back to something that's more human. Yes. Lesson plans. All right. I think we're running out of time. But lesson plans. Do you really mean me to say something about that? Maybe not. I think perhaps you do know how to do lesson plans.
I was just I was teaching on the PG tip for health science education, and one of the assignments was that they had to create and critique their own lesson plans. And it's interesting how things are happening in their minds that you can clearly see when they have to justify why they've put something in a lesson plan. Their justification is not apparent in their lesson plan. So we need to actually learn how to write so that other people can do.
Yes, and maybe this business also about beginning at the end, because if I've worked with departments on writing plans, when I think the question about what are the graduate attributes that you want, and then going backwards from that. Because I had a great breakthrough moment with one department when they realized that their attributes were not being measured at all in the degree. So that's great. So now they're going backwards and thinking about how to make sure that there's a journey towards the type of graduates that they want. 4 minutes. So I'm going to ask Noktula, Michelle, Ame, Taskan. Oh, sorry, Sakani. Is it Tasakani? Tasakani.
Hi, it's Chakani.
Chakani, thank you.
Yes.
Please, Chakani,
Okay.
Chakani. Tell me what I want a comment from you, because you came right at the beginning and helped us a lot. Thank you, Lizelle.
No, I think
Chakani.
I think it's making a lot of sense. And I think picking up from what Lizelle says, it's very good that when one is in lectures, you sort of break that. I like the idea of putting a question instead of just coming with PowerPoint presentation and everything, and
It
to
can be
say,
so
come,
boring.
yes, give us ideas, let's generate ideas from them. And I think students would then appreciate that they have self-directed themselves instead of us assuming that they're just going to get everything from everyone. So I think it's a very, it's good, and it's good we enhance those skills for the students, because we want them to become postgraduate. And now even in our undergraduate courses, we expect them to undertake research projects. So if we give them such skills, then they become critical, then they become good researchers. And when they're in third year level, they will be better writers. They will be understanding why they need to write things in a certain way. So that for me, it's almost like having a foresight and preparing them to be learners, and to be criticals as well. And yeah, that's
Very good.
what, yeah, thanks.
I think we all the time have to break people break passivity, sort of.
Yes.
And then in conversation with people you can build things, but if with blankness and silence it's so difficult. And I do appreciate that it's not easy in your faculty, because I had some, I usually teach quite well, but I had some really awful experiences with pre-meds in a large room of them, and they just didn't want to listen to me. They only wanted to get on with medical studies. So I do appreciate that you don't have an easy task, because you have students who have got to cover so much and who are very competitive and don't want to do anything they don't think is relevant. Noctula or Michelle, or is it Ame?
For me, if I can jump in, is my comment from the session is to remember to have a balanced perspective. So that means we have to remember that everyone has their own perspective and their own thoughts and their own way of writing, and not force my idea on my student to say, but this is how you have to do it. Just to stand back and to remember there are different facets, and maybe to engage and to see what's the problem, what's the questions, as you mentioned in your classroom, and then take it from there, because then you get a view on how your students are thinking, and not just force your perceptive and your comments and your view of the world on them.
Yes, and it's so much more interesting then, because people are very unexpected, and you start learning from them. And if they're aware that you're listening hard, they often get much cleverer, because if somebody listens hard to you, somehow it gives you confidence, and you're also interested in your thinking. Listening is a very, very powerful where it's possible. And I know the large classes are an issue. Noctula.
Hello. I think what I'm taking from here, even though I joined late, is that my challenge, which seems to be more of confidence and going back and forth with my writing, can always improve as long as I immerse myself in reading. And as I do so, I think then I open a door for my students to gain from me and to be more confident in writing. Yeah.
Very good. A guy I like very much in writing theory is Peter Elbow, and a big book, which is a compendium of all his work, is called Everyone Can Write Better. So that's also the assumption that there's no writing expert, that we can all write better. And I think that was in somebody else's comments, that we're a workshop, a traditional writing workshop, the power is lateral. You know, this particular day, this person's got the best idea, or that person's got the best idea. And that's rather nice, because it's not the sense that, you know, one person has all the answers, because actually one person never has all the answers, especially if we're all the time thinking. So having that assumption that we're all learning, we can all write better. On some days we all write rubbish, on some days something happens, is much nicer. So yes, getting that environment in the classroom where you've got rid of the fear, if you can make people laugh or do something silly, and then we start learning. Ame, and we're nearly at time. Good. Ame, is Ame?
Yes, I'm
No.
here.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing new and interesting that I've learned from you, it's when you shared about how to engage students, especially in a big, class. What you shared about sharing your lesson plan, your facilitator's guide with one of the students, and that actually helps them to take ownership, of the learning process. Yeah, for me, that's, because sometimes, often we battle with you having to take lead, facilitate, and, and yet it can be a shared responsibility where you say, and obviously those that have got the lesson plan, they obviously have to, plan, for the session.
It worked surprisingly well, because they took responsibility, and the other 9 people in the group respected them for taking the responsibility. And the other thing is, ownership's a really good word, and it's related to authority. So we want to give everybody authority, and authority means that you own your own ideas, and you've shaped it, and you've used the argument, etc. Okay, everyone, I think we've reached 13:02. Many thanks for helping me, because it's a small group and it's a blank screen. So thank you all very much for being very interactive. That was nice. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela. It was very lovely. Really appreciated your effort and insights.
Lovely to meet you all online.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Bye.